in 2002, the American Church took a dramatic and effective action in addressing the issue of clerical sexual abuse of minors. Our diocese was an early leader in creating a diocesan policy in 1988, then revising it in 2002 to conform to the charter. We maintain a zero-tolerance policy. Any priest for whom it has been established he committed an act of sexual abuse of a minor is permanently removed from church ministry. One strike, and you're out. In addition, all reports of sexual abuse of a minor are immediately referred to law enforcement. Also, we have established an Allegation Review Committee, which Waukee Police Chief John Quinn will speak about. Some 18,000 background checks have been conducted in the diocese, covering all in the church who work with minors. I'm happy to say I passed the background check. An expansive Safe Environment program has also been initiated. Sister Jude Fitzpatrick will address these initiatives. Thus, we have kept faith with the victim's desire of prevention and protection for today's youth. In the third phase, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, met with all of the presidents of the bishops' conferences throughout the world in February to raise worldwide awareness in order to begin the process of global reform, including the reform of bishops. The Pope wants a Catholic Church where every mistreatment or abuse of minors or vulnerable people is effectively prosecuted. For our diocese, publishing the list of these priests who have substantiated allegations of abuse against them demonstrates that we remain committed and focused in our efforts to protect our children in our parishes, our schools, and throughout the community. It is my hope that our actions today might facilitate healing and trust. And now, I would like to introduce our Police Chief, John Quinn.
Good morning. I'm John Quinn, Chief of Police for the City of Waukee. I also serve on the Diocese Allegation Review Committee, which investigates allegations of clerical sex abuse of children in the Diocese of Des Moines. We are an advisory body, primarily of lay people, that advises the bishop on the allegations. So with that said, we advise the bishop whether or not the allegation that we find is substantiated. It's his responsibility then, from that point forward, to ensure that the priest is permanently removed from ministry. Now let me share with you what happens when a person comes forward with an allegation of abuse against a priest. First and foremost, the diocese encourages the victim to go to their local law enforcement official and notify them of the alleged abuse. The church, the diocese, then, if in fact the victim does not go to law enforcement, takes the information to law enforcement, and then waits for permission to conduct an investigation on its own. The diocese does not want to interfere or jeopardize law enforcement's investigation. It doesn't matter how long or how much time has transpired when the abuse is alleged to have occurred, all allegations go to law enforcement first. Now, once the diocese receives permission to proceed with its investigation, the bishop suspends the priest, which means that the priest can no longer minister or represent themselves pending the investigation. Now, a news release is prepared and sent out so that the public becomes aware of the situation. It can take protective steps to prevent the possibility of future abuse by the priest. The Allegation Review Committee then examines whether the allegation fits the definition of clerical sex abuse of a minor. The Allegation Committee then investigates and determines if substantial evidence exists to establish reasonable grounds to believe that the abuse occurred. This is not a presumption of guilt, and it is also, at this time, the responsibility of the bishop to ensure that the priest is permanently removed from ministry. Now, let me provide you some of the work that the diocese and the Allegation Review Committee have accomplished. After the abuse scandals in 2002, 505 files of living and deceased priests and bishops who ministered in our diocese were reviewed for claims of abuse. Now, 28 of the files contained allegations of abuse. In 7 of the cases, the priests were exonerated. And 12 of the files contained such limited information that it was information that could not be corroborated in the allegation. Now, this doesn't mean that the allegation was false. In fact, the church had outreach to these victims when it was possible to provide assistance. 9 of the allegations have been confirmed or substantiated. This led to John Ryan and Richard Wagner being laicized. And as the bishop previously mentioned, Albert Wilbering died before he too was laicized, though he was living in a state of confined setting. In 2014, the files of all living priests were once again reviewed, this time by a private investigator. We did this to determine whether any additional cases of abuse or misconduct had transpired that were originally missed. In the 2014 review of the files, it led to only one previously unknown claim that the Allegation Review Committee had not reviewed. This was involving a now retired and elderly priest. Following an investigation, the committee could not find sufficient evidence to sustain the claim, which was by then over 30 years old. This is the work of the Allegation Review Committee. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to Sister Jude Fitzpatrick.
I do oversee our comprehensive and rigorous safe environment program. In the course of this experience, I have met with and walked with victims of sexual abuse, and that is why it is so important for me to share with you the work that has been done to ensure a safe and secure environment for children in our diocese. As Bishop said, we can't have an apology without reform. Before anyone is hired, before anyone is allowed to volunteer or be considered for ordained ministry, we do a criminal background check and safe environment training. To date, we have completed more than 18,000 background checks to prevent anyone with a criminal record from serving in our churches and schools. In addition to those newly employed individuals or potential seminarians, background checks have been completed for our priests and deacons, all of our educators, our catechetical leaders, coaches, and volunteers. Anyone who has regular contact with youth, either as an employee or a volunteer in our diocese, must have a background check and undergo safe environment training prior to their service. Our diocese has participated in 16 annual audits of our program conducted by an independent firm. In addition to the paper audits, on-site audits are conducted every 3 years. Following each of those audits, the Diocese of Des Moines has been found to be in compliance with the guidelines from the Charter for the Protection of Children and Young People. Thank you.
We're going to pause for a moment now and hand out the press packets. Inside, you will find the following: a letter from Bishop Pates that has been emailed to Catholics registered in parishes in our diocese, an explanation of how the Diocese of Des Moines has addressed clerical sexual abuse of minors, focusing on progress, healing, and prevention. A press release. A list of 9 who have substantiated allegations of child sexual abuse, and a list of frequently asked questions. As we begin, I ask that you state your name and your news organization before asking your questions about the information that we've provided today.
That 18,000 number, when it comes to the background checks, is that just within the Des Moines Diocese that number has been done here?
Sister Jude?
Yes, that is correct. And as you know, our diocese covers basically the southwest quarter of the state, so it's beyond Des Moines.
Yes. Shelby Fleck with the Des Moines Register. Did you say, Bishop Gates, that Wilwarding had been responsible for about half of the allegations? Could you go about that?
That's correct.
Was this mandated somehow that you guys had to release this, or what's the significance of doing this today?
The significance of doing it today is that we wanted to make sure that we establish the ability for victims to come forward, also to contribute to their healing, to show that we're as transparent as we possibly can be about this issue, and that hopefully that, you know, that if there's people who are lacking trust in the diocese and what we're trying to do, that they hopefully would be able to read this and gain some understanding, further understanding. So it's not mandated, that's to ask your question, in each diocese. So I think throughout the country, probably now about 2/3 of the dioceses have done so.
I know Bishop Nicholas in the recent past has had a similar news conference. Do you know of the other two?
Thank you for the question. And the other two, I think the Archdiocese of Dubuque, a number of years ago, maybe even a decade ago, released about some names of what they call substantiated, allegations. And the Diocese of Davenport underwent bankruptcy, and all those names came to the surface at that time. So they were released in different ways, but basically the same information has been shared by now by all 4 dioceses. That's a very good question, and thanks for asking it. That's why we've had the charter of 2002, that for 20 years we have not had a reported sexual abuse of a minor by a cleric reported to us as actually occurring in real time. So nothing has happened in real time in that situation. We also, as I tried to emphasize a little bit, is one strike and you're out. So if a credible, substantiated allegation comes to our attention, it is proved the priest is removed from ministry permanently, forever. And so that we can't have that serial abuse of several victims going forward once we're informed and once the allegation occurs. In addition, we've taken all of these other steps, in terms of prevention, and also that we have the background checks, we have the safe environment training. All of that sort of thing, I think, is helping us to ensure that it won't happen again. We're doing everything that we can, and we won't stand comfortable until we've eliminated this scourge in our diocese. We're totally committed to do that. So I can't guarantee absolutely that it will never happen again, but we're doing everything that we can to make sure to restore the trust, especially with the victims. As I said before, that what they want most is that this does not happen to others, and that's in large measure some of the reason they come forward.
And just to be clear, since there hasn't been any allegations reported since this charter was put in place?
No, excuse me, I should be really clear. Allegations have been reported, but they occurred before 1997. So they were reported of past sexual abuse. One, we did an investigation. One priest was found, credible allegation. He has been removed from ministry.
So there has been the one strike and you're out used.
Right, but for way back when. So just so we can get our mind around that, there's the allegations and then there's the action. And when did it happen? and then what happened to that individual priest. It applies also to our deacons, to any of our people working in any ministry in the church itself. That's why we have 18,000 background checks. Anybody working with children is subject to the background checks and the discipline.
I forgot to add.
Okay, I do want.
Kay with Radio Iowa.
Okay, Kay, how are you? Good.
I want to ask a maybe sensitive question. I know that one of the priests listed is residing in a senior care facility.
That's correct.
Are there any restrictions on his interaction with other residents of that facility?
I think that he is not allowed to, celebrate ministry publicly, but he is not in a condition, I think, that he could, harm anybody because of his present situation, and he's carefully monitored.
Can you kind of explain what it means to live in a senior care facility in the diocese, and why is he allowed to live within the diocese if he has social allegations?
Well, I think, what we tried to do is say that he is living in a senior care residence, and he can never exercise ministry again, but you're either laicized or you're asked to live a life of prayer and penance, and under a situation in which you're monitored, and so you cannot, do that sort of thing. I think he's beyond 80 and has a memory loss condition. So he is not capable of doing further harm, but we will monitor him very carefully.
Donald Zach from Channel 13 News. Just to be clear, if there is a priest and allegations come up against him, is that priest allowed to continue preaching while the investigation is underway?
No. He is temporarily at least relieved of ministry and put on suspension.
Chief Quinn,
Yes.
are you a lifelong Catholic?
Yes, I am.
So, and a member of the law enforcement community?
Correct.
In general, what are your thoughts about how the church has handled this from a law enforcement perspective? I know you're on this advisory committee, but from a law enforcement perspective over the past 20 years.
Sure. What's happened before in the past, it's disheartening, disappointing. In law enforcement, abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter who makes it, who does it. It's illegal, and it needs to be stopped, and it needs to be addressed. And so I'm happy to say that the steps that the church has taken have been proactive, and they have had the ability and the effect, I hope, to rid the church of this really plague that's followed through with it. It's our goal right now to protect the children of the church. That's what the Allegation Review Committee is about. And also to let them know that the church focuses on that protection. It's the #1 primary goal. Safety and security of our children, they're the most prized possession. And with that said, we want to rehabilitate the reputation of the church, give credibility back to its leadership, exactly where it belongs, and then focus on what we do best, and that's the healing of people, and also providing a safe environment for them to practice their faith.
Why no convictions? I mean, you would be very careful to say these are substantiated allegations,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a, presumption, there's still the presumption of innocence. Why not go with charges?
Well, the charges aren't up to the Allegation Review Committee. The Allegation Review Committee, as I indicated earlier, the first step that the diocese emphasizes is that the victim goes to law enforcement. And if the victim doesn't go to law enforcement, the Allegation Review Committee, representatives of the diocese, take that information to law enforcement for them to examine. The problem with situations like this, they're so historical in nature in that they're beyond the statute of limitations, meaning that they can't be entered into the judicial process for accountability. So with that said, the church then takes on the obligation, conducts its own investigation, looks at the burden of proof, establishes that, and then the bishop, based upon a recommendation from the Allegation Review Committee, then says, hey, it's my responsibility to ensure that this priest is removed from ministry permanently. And that's the process right now. It's working, and it's a work in progress each and every day.
Do you know off the top of your head what the statute of limitation is in this kind of crime?
Yeah, it's 10 years beyond the age of maturity, which is 18.
Okay.
Chief Quinn, Brandon Lawrence from Channel 5, kind of going off of that, do you think that there should be changes to the statute of limitations? Should changes from a law perspective be made?
The one thing I can tell you is that I'm not a politician, and it's the legislature that creates those dynamics associated with, you know, the tenure or time period for which these cases can be brought and presented into court. So I really don't have a comment on that. I don't have an opinion. All I know is that the church is doing everything it can to ensure the safety and welfare of those people, especially the children inside the church.
Are we allowed to know where Howard Fitzgerald resides outside the diocese?
Yes, Howard Fitzgerald resides in southeast Iowa with a relative.
Can you be any more specific than that?
I don't know the town exactly. I don't have it at the tip of my tongue. That we can do more research and let you know if you like with Jason there.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Is Leonard Hinkle's facility here in Des Moines, the senior care facility?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Does Father Hinkle live in Des Moines?
No, Father Kenkel lives in Harlan.
Do we have any other questions?
Chief Quinn,
Yes.
as a law enforcement official, are you happy with what is being done now to keep children safe?
I am happy with it. Happy is a difficult term to use in a situation like this when you're dealing with such a serious issue, but I am pleased with the church and the proactive steps it's taking today to address this concern, this issue. I believe it's the proper path that they've taken, and I know that Bishop Pates, this is a primary focus on him, and you can see how important this is. He wanted to release the names of the priests, become transparent prior to his departure from his position as bishop here in Des Moines Diocese. So I appreciate the work that is being done today. There's a lot of work still to be done, but the steps that have been taken, I appreciate. Not just from a law enforcement perspective, but the fact that I'm a member of this diocese, a member of a parish. And so with that said, we all have an investment in the future of the church. And with that said, I know that transparency is the way to go. They've been open, they've been honest about that. And as long as I'm in law enforcement, I guarantee you that the right thing will be done, especially when it comes to the Allegation Review Committee. If there's a presentation of a case, we will investigate it thoroughly, and then we will hold the priests accountable for their actions if, in fact, the allegation has been substantiated.
Yes.
And just so I can make sure, the two priests where allegations were not previously known were, who were they again?
It's Mangan is one of them, Father Mangan, and the other one here is, I'll get it here for you, Paul Conley. Paul Conley and Dennis Mangan.
Okay.
I think that might be in your information too, but you haven't had an opportunity to check it out.
And why were those not previously?
Well, I think that one of them was died while the was under study, and I think the other one comes before the entirety of this whole issue became. It's very old cases, but we still did the research to reach back to that. So it's a matter of trying to bring us up to date. Totally.
Maybe just to wrap it all up, what's next? I mean, as you get ready to retire, and what's your hope for this diocese?
Well, my hope is that this is a very strong diocese. I've been very privileged to serve it. I think that, you know, we have the Bishop Sharon and Bishop Bullock. When he came, he was went right into it. That 1988, he established that first, you know, policy that has been so very effective. So I think we're going to go forward. I know the next bishop, I don't think will ever be satisfied until we have absolutely no more child sexual abuse in this diocese. I think every bishop in the country shares the same thing, but we'll be bulldogs about going forward and enforcing the policy because it's so, so important for our young people, et cetera, you know. And we, as I say, we feel terrible. If you've ever interviewed a victim, you feel how they have experienced such pain and suffering. We don't want that for anybody. And so we're going to go forward in a very positive sense to make sure that what we can do. You know, there's human nature is human nature, but we're determined to try to eradicate this. I will do it from a perspective of retirement, but I'll be right there cheering them on and encouraging them. But we got a strong diocese. We're going to do well, and we want to really make this work and effective.
One last question for you. Could this have been announced any sooner?
Well, it probably could have. We had to do our research. We want to be as assured as possible that what we're giving you is good information, solid information. And of course, we have the other activity of the diocese, so we're trying to go through that. And so we tried to do it at this time because we want to be transparent. We want to reach out to the victims. We want to do some healing. We want them to feel comfortable coming forward to give their story. And we want to help them with that story and help them to recover. It's the number one priority for us is to help in the recovery of these victims. So it could have come forward, but we felt this was an opportune time, all things considered. And hopefully that this information will be helpful in the way that I described.
I want to thank everybody for coming.
Okay.
Oh.
Jean Wells with Iowa Catholic Radio. As we look at the children, I mean, that's the issue. And this is a scourge that is beyond the church. It permeates so many other entities. How do we help the children of today without tainting their own mind about all adults being horrible people? How do we help them be safe in their own situations, whether in school or at churches or in scouts or wherever? How do we help?
Well, we try to do within the context of the church the safe environment training that also involves the children, and so that alerts them to, you know, strangers who may not be about good, and they can recognize, you know, what we describe as grooming, all that sort of thing. I think typically that they're around their parents, their family, and the church, you know, because what we've tried to do, the church is a very safe place for young people today. We welcome them, we're very alert so that they do not have any problems, but it's a safe place and they can trust it. So we want to communicate that message to their families, to their schools, other places. As you state, it's a problem, societal problem. It's not just a problem for the church. So we want to work hand in hand with all of the institutions in society to together overcome it, because it's not only for our own children that we're interested in all children. That's our ministry, our service, our outreach. We'll work together to do everything we possibly can to remove this scourge.
Thank you for coming. You should have my contact information in your press packets. I'm Anne Marie Cox. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions when you get back. Thank you again for coming.
Okay, thanks, Emery. Okay, thanks. I will read it as well.
You're excellent.
Thanks for coming.